Hello children, so we are back. We have already completed the revision of nutrition topic. Now let us revise respiration. So children, before I start respiration, a quick question. If you remember, what is nutrition? Nutrition is a process of taking in food. But mere taking in of food will not be sufficient for the organism, as that food needs to be broken down to liberate energy. And to break down that food or to liberate energy, we have a process that is called as respiration. Now in this video, we'll understand how respiration takes place and what are the steps involved in respiration. So first of all, if you remember, the food that is broken down in our body is present in the simple form, the sugar, that is glucose. Now children, here you need to understand that how is this glucose broken down to liberate energy. So we all know there are a variety of organisms, and different organisms must be following different pathways, different ways to break down glucose. So what are the steps of breaking down of glucose, and where, in which part of the organism this breaking down of glucose takes place? Let us understand that. So first thing you need to remember here is, in any organism, or I should say in all the organism, the first step of breaking down of glucose is common. That is, glucose is first broken down into pyruvate. Right? So what is this pyruvate? If you remember, children, what is the formula of glucose? C6H12O6. And that means glucose is 6 carbon atom structure. This 6 carbon atom structure in all living organisms to obtain energy is first broken down into a 3 carbon atom structure that is called as pyruvate. And where this step occurs? This step occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. I hope it is clear that to obtain energy, our body, or you can say living organism, undergo a process called as respiration. And how is this energy obtained? To obtain energy, glucose, a molecule, is broken into pyruvate, a molecule called as pyruvate. This step of breaking down of glucose into pyruvate is common in all living organisms. So I will write all organisms here. This is the first common step which occurs in all organisms, that occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now further, how this energy will be liberated from pyruvate depends upon the conditions. There are organisms which further break down this pyruvate in presence of oxygen. There are organisms which break down this pyruvate in absence of oxygen. And there is a condition which occurs in organisms where glucose is broken into in the presence of oxygen, that is called as insufficient supply of oxygen. I hope this is clear. To liberate energy, glucose has to be broken down. So glucose will be first converted into pyruvate, a 3 carbon atom molecule. This occurs in all living organisms in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now further, to liberate energy, here some amount of energy is also liberated. Now further breaking of pyruvate, how further it will be broken down depends upon the organism. Whether the organism will utilize oxygen, that is in presence of oxygen it will break down pyruvate, or in absence of oxygen it will break down pyruvate, or a condition where the organism does not get sufficient supply of oxygen, and hence in insufficient supply of oxygen it breaks pyruvate. What happens in these process? So the first step, where the organism breaks in the presence of oxygen. So first I'll write in which organisms it occurs. It occurs in all higher organisms, higher animals and plants. Absence of oxygen occurs in yeast and some bacteria. And you can also write some flatworms like tapeworm. There also breaking of pyruvate takes place in absence of oxygen. Insufficient supply of oxygen. This condition will occur in higher animals when they don't get sufficient supply of oxygen. So where it will occur? It will occur in their muscle cells. Now, what happens in presence of oxygen? So pyruvate, when it is broken in presence of oxygen, what all product it forms? It forms carbon dioxide, CO2. It forms H2O, that is water, and energy is liberated. Right? Okay. Then what happens in absence of oxygen? Organisms such as yeast and some bacteria and some flatworms, when they break pyruvate in absence of oxygen, they form a 2 carbon atom structure which is called as ethanol, 2Cl right here. Then they also form CO2 and energy is liberated. Okay. What happens in insufficient supply of oxygen? As I said, it occurs in organism where presence of oxygen is there, but they do not get sufficient supply. Now you think, when such condition may arise, when the organism is not able to get sufficient supply of oxygen. For example, when we are doing heavy muscular activity like jogging, running, etc., physical exercise, you observe that we do not get there can be a condition where we do not get proper oxygen, and then we start breathing fast. In that condition, pyruvate has to liberate energy, because we are doing physical exercise. We require energy for doing that physical exercise. Therefore, but to break down that pyruvate, oxygen is not sufficient. So what does body do? What does the muscle cells do? They break down this pyruvate into a 3 carbon atom molecule called as lactic acid. It is a 3 carbon atom molecule and energy is liberated. Now children, what happens to this lactic acid? This lactic acid gets accumulated in the muscle cells. And sometimes you must have observed that your body and your muscles get cramped when you are doing physical exercise. So that is the condition arised when there is insufficient supply of oxygen in the muscle cells. This lactic acid gets stored in the muscle cells. And how do you get relief from it? When there is sufficient supply of oxygen, this lactic acid is further processed. Also, you can get relief by giving hot water bath treatment or massaging that area. You can get relief from that those cramps, right? I guess this is clear now. Let us come back to the topic that pyruvate further breaking will depend upon organism, whether it decides to or whether it is able to break down pyruvate in presence of oxygen, or lower organisms where they don't utilize oxygen, in absence of oxygen they break down pyruvate, and condition where there is insufficient supply of oxygen. One more thing here I should mention that in organism, higher organisms like eukaryotes, where pyruvate is processed in presence of oxygen, this is a condition which occurs in the mitochondria. And absence of oxygen, as you see, this occurs in lower organisms such as yeast, bacteria. They are the not yeast but bacteria. Yes, it is a prokaryote. So their mitochondria is absent. Hence, it will not occur in the mitochondria. Rather, it occurs in the cell, in the cytoplasm of the cell. Right. Now, what happens to the energy that is liberated? So, this energy which is liberated, what do you think? Is this energy immediately utilized? No, this energy is not utilized immediately, but rather this energy is immediately converted into a molecule which is called as ATP. I hope you remember the full form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. What is this ATP? You can say this energy which is liberated during the process of breaking down of glucose. This energy is converted into a molecule ATP. Why it is converted? Because this ATP molecule is then utilized as a currency, or you can say a fuel. It acts as energy currency or fuel, energy fuel for your body. That means whenever your body requires energy, or you can say whenever your cells require energy, they utilize this ATP to liberate energy, to carry out their process. And what are such reactions called when there is energy utilizing, when there is energy used to carry out various reactions? Such reactions are called as endothermic reaction. If you remember, you have studied in chemistry that endothermic reactions mean where energy is taken in, taken in, therm means heat, or you can say heat energy. So where the energy is used to carry out the reaction.